Your brain controls everything. It's your number one wealth building asset. And the faster you can learn, the faster you can earn. Because today, knowledge is not only power, it's about profit.
I think that's super smart. A lot of people concentrate on their bodies and they forget about their brain.
And so, again, there's no such thing as a good or bad brain. There's a trained brain and an untrained brain. That's the truth. When you understand how your brain works, you can work your brain. And when you can learn and focus and remember and apply, you can apply that towards anything.
Hey, Jim, thanks so much for joining us on Young and Profiting Podcast.
It's so good to be here. Congratulations on your show.
Thank you. I am super excited to have you. I've been wanting to have you on the show for like 2 years now. And for those who don't know, Jim has been spending the last 3 decades dissecting the science of learning and memory. He's now an internationally renowned expert in memory improvement, brain optimization, and accelerated learning. He's worked with huge names, politicians, celebrities, and his latest book, Limitless, has become an instant New York Times bestseller. And considering all that you've accomplished, I think a lot of our young and profiters would be surprised to hear that you actually had a traumatic brain injury when you were in kindergarten. It left you learning challenged, and when you were 9, one of your teachers came to your defense while others were teasing you and said, "That's the boy with the broken brain, leave him alone." And that was a defining moment for you in that your brain was broken. It actually became your limit until the age of 18. Today, you're known for your incredible brain and your ability to do the seemingly impossible, like memorizing everyone's name in a room filled with hundreds of people. So let's begin here. Talk to us about those early years when you were the boy with the broken brain, and tell us about this boy you were before you started your transformation.
Wow. Okay, let's go back. You mentioned my traumatic brain injury when I was in kindergarten, and I was rushed to the emergency room. And where it really showed up, the effects was in school. I had trouble learning. I couldn't focus. I had a horrible memory. I couldn't process information like everybody else. Teachers would repeat themselves over and over again, and I learned to pretend to understand, but I really didn't understand anything. It took me a few years longer just to learn how to read. And now those are really, there's a lot of anxiety and stress for a kid. You remember sitting in those reading circles, they would pass around a book and you have to read out loud when it came to you. And I would look at the page and the words meant nothing. And yeah, I thought I had the broken brain. And every single time I did badly on a test or wasn't picked for sports in school, which was very often, I would always say, "Oh, because I have the broken brain." And yeah, adults have to be very careful with their external words because they become a child's internal words. And that became my self-talk. Even when at events, when people see me do these demonstrations, I never do it to impress them. I really do them to express to them what's possible. Because the truth is, every single one of your listeners could do that and a whole lot more. We just weren't taught. If anything, we were taught a lie that somehow our potential, our intelligence is somehow fixed, like maybe our shoe size. And we've discovered more about the human brain. Here's the exciting news. And more in the past 10 years than the previous 1,000 years combined. And we found is we're grossly underestimating our own capabilities. That really is not even the sky's the limit. It's really our minds are the limit. And so my mission really is to build better, brighter brains. No brain left behind. And, I know what it's like to struggle, to be distracted, to not feel confident in your own mind. And I really feel that, your brain is your number one wealth building asset. And the faster you can learn, the faster you can earn. Because today, knowledge is not only power, knowledge is a lot of what your show is about. It's about profit. And I don't just mean financial profit. I mean, all the treasures of your life gets better. When you understand how your brain works, you can work your brain. And when you can learn and focus and remember and apply, you can apply that towards anything: money, management, martial arts, music, Mandarin. Everything in your life gets so much easier. And so my message to everybody really is that limits are learned, and that it's just our school system didn't really teach us how our brain works. There's no class on focus or memory. And so when we beat ourselves up because we can't concentrate or we can't understand something, it's not, I realized after years of doing this, it's not how smart we are. It's really how are we smart? And we're all smart in different ways. And I think the most important skill for entrepreneurs or aspiring entrepreneurs or people who really want to get to the next level is learning how to learn. And that's really, really what we focus on.
Yeah. And I really relate to you. And I was so excited to bring you on because I think this is such an important topic. And I think a lot of people have been through a similar struggle. I remember, like, I wasn't always good at math. They would always put me in the poor
Mm,
math class when I was younger. And then I had this stigma that I was like always terrible at math. Then I get to college and I'm great at math. You know what I mean? And you just kind of have this transformation once you realize that these are actually just labels and limitations, and you can get over it as an adult. But so many of us spend years believing this lie that adults told us when we were little, or like one thing happened, and we go on believing forever that that's just who we are, right?
mm. And the word you use is absolutely, I use it in the book Limitless, lie. We believe these lies, and a lie for me is stands, everything's kind of turned into an acronym or some kind of mnemonic to make it easy to recall. But lies for me stands for a limited idea entertained. It's not true that you're not smart enough. It's just a limited idea that we're entertaining. It's not true that, that you're not smart enough, or that you don't have the resourcefulness. And so it's really about transcending. I think the nature of
Mm-hmm.
personal growth is about transcending. It's about ending the trance, ending this mass hypnosis, maybe through we got in from our parents or marketing or media, that somehow that we're broken, somehow
Mm-hmm.
that somehow we could only have only a small amount, or be a small amount, or share a small amount. And we found that we shouldn't be. I find, especially of recent, that the big mistake people make is they shrink all that's possible to fit their minds, when maybe we should explore expanding our minds to fit all that's really
Mm.
possible.
I love that. So let's fast forward to your college years.
Hmm.
Your label became your limit from your age of 5 to 18. You were sort of put in
Hmm.
this box. You didn't believe you could be better necessarily, or you didn't have the tools.
Yeah.
And you were a freshman in college. You still had a difficult time learning like your peers. And you were actually ready to drop out of school, but you ended up meeting a mentor. It was your friend's dad. He gave you new direction, and it was a
Yeah.
very pivotal point in your life. I'd love for you to share that story with us, and why that moment in time was so eye-opening for you.
So as you mentioned, I thought getting into school would give me a reset. Like I thought freshman meant fresh start. As I took all these classes, and I wanted to show the world, and show myself, really, maybe make people around me proud. And I did worse. And it was so difficult for me, and I
Mm.
didn't have the money to be in school to begin with. And so I was ready to quit. And when I had that thought, I was talking to friends, and a friend said, "Hey, that's a big life decision. Why don't you get some perspective?" And he invites me to visit his home over the weekend, where he was going to just kind of get some time off. And I agree. And when I get to this person's home, it's beautiful. It's on the water, and the father walks me around his property, and before dinner, and asked me a very innocent question. And the question is, "How's school?" And that is, I mean, I'm just getting choked up even like thinking about it right now,
Aw.
because I didn't, that was the worst question you could ask me. And I start bawling in front of this stranger because I have so much pressure that, I haven't told anybody. And, I told him my whole story about having my brain injury and not feeling enough, and like school's not for me, and I'm ready to quit. I don't know how to tell my folks. And he said, "Jim, and this question, one question changes everything, right?" He said, "Why are you in school? What do you want to be? What do you want to do? What do you want to have? What do you want to share?" And completely honest, I didn't have any answer, because I didn't know why I was in school. I just thought that's what you do, right? Hala, it's like,
Mhm.
I was on that path. And when I start thinking about it, I go to answer him, and he says, "Stop." He reaches out in his back pocket, takes out a notepad, and he just asks me to write down, tears out a couple of sheets, make me write down, all the things I want, if anything is possible, if you can't fail,
Mm.
what would you do? And I start writing these things down, and I don't know how much time goes by. I kind of lose track of time. And when I'm done, though, I start folding the sheets of paper to put in my pocket, and he rips them out of my hands, and I'm freaking out because he starts reading them. And I've never shared, these things, my dreams or my desires, my goals, with anybody. And I didn't even realize some of these things I wanted until I went through this exercise. And I'm freaking out because I'm afraid of being judged, like anybody. You don't want to be judged. You don't want to feel like, that, oh, that you're not good enough for all these things. And when he's done, he starts, he looks at me, he says, Jim, you are this close to everything on this list. And he's, if for those who are watching on video, he's spreading my index fingers about a foot apart. And I was like, no way, I'm not that close. Give me 10 lifetimes. I'm not going to crack that list. And he takes his
Mm-hmm.
index fingers and he puts them to the side of my head, meaning what's in between is the key that would
Ah.
unlock those achievements, and meaning my brain. And
Mm-hmm.
he walks me into his home, into a room I've never seen before. It is wall to wall, ceiling to floor, covered in books. And at this point, I've never read a book cover to cover. I still have some reading issues, ability issues, and I'm freaking out. It's like being in a room full of snakes,
Mm-hmm.
for people who are phobic of, and have anxiety around something. And what makes it worse is he starts going to the shelves and grabs these snakes, if you will, and starts handing them to me. And just book after book. And I started looking at the titles, and there are these biographies of some incredible women and men in history, and some very early personal growth books. I mean, the classics: Norman Vincent Peale, The Power of Positive Thinking, Think and Grow Rich, Napoleon Hill. And he says, Jim, he says, leaders or readers, I want you to read one book a week. And my honest reaction was, have you not heard anything I've said to you this entire time? I have learning disabilities. I have challenges. I can't read very well. I have so much schoolwork. And when I said I have so much schoolwork, he said, Jim, don't let school get in the way of your education.
Mm-hmm.
And I didn't realize it was a Mark Twain quote at the time, but I was like, wow, it's really profound. And I can't promise to read a book a week. And then, very smart man, he reaches into his pocket and he takes out my goals, like my bucket list, and he starts reading every single one of my goals out loud. And something all about hearing like your goals and your deepest desires said by a stranger, like incanted out into the world, and mess with my mind and my spirit, honestly, something fierce. And a lot of things on that list were things I wanted to do for my parents, things that they would, even if they could afford to, they wouldn't do for themselves. And with that motivation, and those reasons, I promised to read one book a week. Well, fast forward, now I'm back at school and I have all these midterms. I'm sitting at my desk. I have a pile of books I have to read for school and a pile of books I promised to read. And I already couldn't get through pile A. So where do I find the time? So I don't eat, I don't sleep, I don't socialize, I don't work out, I don't do anything. I just live in the library day and night for
Mm.
weeks and weeks. And one night I pass out at the library, 2 a.m. I fall down a flight of stairs. I hit my head again. And I woke up 2 full days later in the hospital. And at this point, I was hooked up to all these IVs. I was malnourished, dehydrated. I was down to 117 pounds. I mean, I was wasted away because I was just
Wow.
taking care of myself. And it was the darkest point in my life. And at that point, when I woke up, something else woke up inside of me also, and kind of renewed sense of like purpose. And I thought, well, and it's interesting because I didn't know what to do, and the nurse came in with a mug of tea and it had a picture of Albert Einstein, and a genius. But the quote was one you've heard before. It said, "The same level of thinking that has created your problem won't solve your problem." And it made me
Mm.
ask a new question, the power of questions again. What's my real problem? My problem is I'm a slow learner. And I was like, how do I think differently about it? Maybe I can learn how to learn faster. So I put my schoolwork aside and I just started studying the art and science around learning. I want to understand how my brain works so I can work my brain. How does my memory work so I can work my memory better? How does focus work? I started studying ancient methodologies of what did ancient civilizations do before there were printing presses? How do they remember things? And new brain science. And after a couple of months of studying this, a light switch just flipped on, and I started in school understanding things for the very first time in my life. I started to have this renewed focus and interest in learning. I started to be able to read, be able to retain, and do better. My grades shot up, but not only that, but my life got better. And the reason why I'm still here 30 years later, plus years later, is because I started, it's funny when you learn something, like you watch movies like The Matrix, or, if you're a
Mm-hmm.
superhero, whatever, it's always, you kind of go from this Joseph Campbell's work, you go from this ordinary world to this extraordinary world, and then you can't help but bring back, things. And I started sharing some of the things I was doing with friends, and I started tutoring And one of my very first students, I was teaching her how speed reading. She read 30 books in 30 days. Can you imagine? So many people
It's a
are
lot.
really good at buying books, and that's a different skill set than reading those books. People buy books, they sit on your shelf, it becomes shelf help, not self help. And I wanted to know not how she did it, but why. And I found out that her motivation was um, was her mom. Her mom was diagnosed with terminal cancer. Doctors gave her mom maybe 2 months to live, and the books she was reading were books on health and wellness, books to save her mom's life. And I find out 6 months later, she calls and she's crying and crying. And when she stops crying, I find out they're tears of joy that her mother not only survived, but is getting better. Doctors don't know how or why. The doctors were calling it a miracle. But her mother attributed the great advice she got from her daughter, who learned her from all these books. And
Wow.
and it just in that moment, I found my mission in life because I realized in that moment, if knowledge is power, we hear that a lot. Then reading and learning is our superpower. And I realized it's the most important superpower, and it's a power we all have inside of us.
Yeah. Wow. Thank you so much for sharing that incredible story. So, I'm going to take us down a rabbit hole. I wasn't originally planning this, but as you were telling your story, I couldn't help but start thinking about immigrant parents and sort of like the pros and the cons of immigrant parents. So, I came from immigrant parents. I'm assuming you came from immigrant parents. Am I
Hmm.
correct?
Yes.
And I remember like all my friends, I actually had my dad was a doctor, but even though my dad was a doctor, nobody helped me with homework when I was a kid. Like
Really?
I remember like it was kind of like on my own because my mom didn't speak that great of English. My dad was busy at work providing for the family. So I felt like I was always alone, where I feel like other people, peers that might have had American parents, probably got help with their homework and things like that, or better guidance. Like you had that conversation with you when you were 18 and nobody ever told you to write your
Mm,
goals down before, right?
right.
Because when you have immigrant parents, they're kind of figuring out how to navigate the world and provide, and they're kind of on this lower rung than everyone else trying to figure it out. I feel like sometimes you don't get the advice that you need when you're a kid. So talk to us about that. Does that ring any bells for you? Or I'd love to hear your
Yeah.
thoughts.
Let's go there. Yeah, my dad came to the United States when he was 13. He lost both his parents, and so didn't speak the language, didn't have any money. Came and lived with his aunt, who I knew as my grandmother, and my mother grew up. They lived in the back of a laundromat that my grandmother worked at, and so it was kind of that environment. Didn't speak the language, and it's interesting because sometimes we think about resources and growing up, we didn't have any network or connections or money or education or those kind of things. But I feel like a lot of it comes to the resources we have inside. And I think, again, our most important is the resource of our own mind is really,
Hmm.
truly limitless. And so I think within every disadvantage, there's that word advantage, right?
Hmm.
With challenge comes change. My two biggest challenges growing up were learning for a decade and a half. And because of it, my other challenge was public speaking
Mm.
because my superpower growing up was shrinking down. I didn't want to be seen because I never had the answer. Never. If I was ever called on in class, I would never know what the right, what the solution was. And so I've always felt like it would highlight, I never wanted the spotlight and my insecurities, my inadequacies kind of like seen by everybody. And so my
Hmm.
superpower was being invisible. And the universe has a sense of humor because what do I do? It's like for a living, all I do is public speak on this thing called learning. And so I really think that our disadvantages can be an advantage, that through our struggles lead to strengths, that
100%.
through challenge leads to change. And but my parents, they're remarkable. I attribute it, I think that in all fairness, that anything that's good that's come out of me has come from them, and anything that's fallen short is really on me. I take that responsibility because they're the reason why I learned to to do what I say that I'm going to do. Discipline, kindness, working hard. And I really do think that if somebody is they they do the right things for the right reasons. They're kind. They're willing to learn and make mistakes, and then I feel like our results will speak for themselves. My challenge is sometimes where we give up our power outside of us. We give up our
Mm-hmm.
agency by making an excuse or complaining. And the truth is, we can't be upset by the results we didn't get from the work we didn't do. And so I feel like it's so important that, especially if somebody's on the path of building wealth or starting a business, in the beginning it's really hard, right? Because you've never done this before. There's a learning
Mm-hmm.
curve. The results don't show up right away, right? It tests your persistence, your patience, your commitment also, and you have to feed your dreams. You have to feed your business until
Mm-hmm.
your business or your dreams feed you back. And
Yeah.
in the beginning, you're grossly underpaid, if anything. But if you're consistent and you work hard, you're always learning, then I feel like at some point it switches, and
Oh yeah.
and you get overpaid for the things that you do because of all the work that you did before that. And so I feel like Jim Rohn has this quote that you're rewarded in public, which for the work you do in private. And I feel like
Mm.
everybody right now that's struggling, that's putting in the hours and the early mornings or the late nights, I just feel like part of it is just taking care of yourself and believing in yourself. And we hear this all the time. For me, believing in myself is like I go for a run every morning, right? My last
Mm-hmm.
name really is Kwik, and so I had to be a runner. But I have a fear of heights a little bit, and because I've fallen 3 times and hurt, I had 3 traumatic brain injuries, falling off rooftops and the such. I wasn't very. My parents had like multiple jobs, and I wasn't very well supervised, if you will.
Mm-hmm.
And so I do this mind experiment where I just see things from other people's point of view, because as an introvert and being so shy, I would just study people in school, right? Because I was always in, my own mind and wondering
Mm-hmm.
why other people were so bright and geniuses and doing so well in school and so popular and so on. But I saw this bird the other day, and I realized that if I was that bird, I'd be so scared being that high up in the tree. And I realized, while it's singing its song and it's calm and it's calm and its confidence doesn't come from putting its trust in the tree branch. The bird's calm and confidence comes from putting its trust in its own wings. And I feel like that, when we have to know ourselves and have the curiosity to know ourselves, but then also trust ourselves, and then having the courage to be ourselves also. It's a different it's a different practice.
Totally. I couldn't agree with more with everything that you said. I'm totally on the same page. So let's talk about the ability to unlimit ourselves,
Mhm.
right? So I think that's really important, being able to believe in yourself, like you were just saying. And so I'd love to understand the importance of motivation related to believing in yourself.
So motivation for me is not something that's abstract. It's something very, very tangible. This actually came from, I have a formula that I use to motivate myself and motivate clients that I get to work with. And it's very simple. And we can turn this into a little master class. I encourage everyone to take notes. Um, it's P times E times S3, 3 factors for limitless motivation. So if you
Mm-hmm.
struggle with getting yourself to do what you know you should do, because knowledge by itself is not power, it only gets power when we apply it, when we implement it, right?
Mm-hmm.
P times E times S3. And so, well, we could do a thought experiment. Everyone think about something that you're not motivated to do. Something that you know you should do, but you're not doing
Mm-hmm.
it. Maybe it's in meditation, or maybe it's working out, maybe it's reading each day, whatever it happens to be. So the P stands for purpose. And I don't mean
Okay.
our life's purpose. We could talk about that, but I mean the reasons. Like, without reasons, you won't get the result. Even if you want to remember names, which I think is one of the most important skills,
Mm-hmm.
networking, business skills, business etiquette skills, because how are you going to show somebody you're going to care for their future, their family, their health, their finances, whatever it is you sell them, if you don't care enough just to remember their name? A lot of people will remember names better if they just had a reason to remember their names, right? Like,
Mm-hmm.
ask yourself, why do I want to remember the person's name? Maybe it's to show the person respect. Maybe it's to practice these things I learned from this podcast, right? And so it has to go from your head to your heart to your hands. Meaning, if
Mm-hmm.
you could have visualization, if you visualize in your head, you have goals in your head, a bucket list, KPIs, whatever in your head, and you're not acting consistently with your head, check in with your hands, check in with the second H, which is our heart, right? And the
Mm.
heart is a symbol of emotions, right? Because we are not logical. Even people don't buy logically. We know that. People buy emotionally, right? Because we are
Mm-hmm.
not logical, we are biological. You think we're not logical, we're biological. You think about dopamine and
That's good.
oxytocin, serotonin, endorphins. We are this chemical feeling soup. But we don't do things unless we feel it. And that's really the key to a long-term memory. We tend to remember things that are charged with emotions, right? And there's a song you could hear that could take you back to when you're a teenager, or a fragrance or a food that could take you back to when you're a child, right? Because information by itself is very forgettable, but information when it's combined with emotions become unforgettable because that part of your middle brain that's your amygdala is processing all these emotions and it's connected to your hippocampus, which is your memory. And so we remember things that make us feel a certain way. And when it comes to motivation, we have to start with that feeling. So when I say
Mm.
purpose, it's not intellectual purpose. We all know we should do these things, but common sense is not common practice unless we feel it. And so allow yourself to feel the sensations of who's counting on you to play your A game. What are the rewards you're going to be able to enjoy if you're able to follow through, right? So
Mm-hmm.
purpose. Now, like let's say it's to do something like reading each day. Leaders or readers. If anyone see me on social media with Elon or Oprah or Bill Gates or whoever, we bonded over books. Because you read to succeed. If somebody has decades of experience and they put into a book, and you can sit down in a few days and read that book, you could download decades into days. That's the biggest advantage
Mm-hmm.
there is in the world,
Yep. Best
right?
ROI on your time. Yeah.
Absolutely. And so people intellectually know that, but if they're not doing it, part of it is they might not feel the benefits of doing it. After
Mm-hmm.
that, though, somebody could have limitless purpose and still not read each day because they need the E, and the P times E times S3. The E stands for energy. Such an important component and element of sustained motivation is sustained energy. And here's the thing, here's a trick when it comes to energy. Energy is not something you have. And people are listening, you're right, Jim, I have no energy. It's something you do. And like one of the
Mm.
principles that I subscribe to for accelerated learning is get in the habit of taking your nouns and transferring them into verbs, transforming them into verbs, meaning we hypnotize ourselves with the language we're using on a regular basis, right? And your brain is this incredible supercomputer, and your self-talk is the program it will run. So if you tell yourself, I'm not good at remembering people's names, you will not remember the name of the next person you meet because you program your
Mm-hmm.
supercomputer not to. Same thing with saying, I don't have energy, because you don't have energy, you do energy. Just like you don't have focus, you're like, Jim, yes, that's my problem. I have no focus. You don't have focus, you do focus. There's a process for focusing, there's a process for generating energy. You don't have creativity, there's a process for being creative, right? Even you don't even have a memory, there's a 3-step process for memorizing something. And the benefit of taking a noun and turning them into a verb is all of a sudden you turn into a process, right? It's a strategy now that you could execute on. And so that's really my goal, is to take these processes and show people there's a method behind what looks like magic. When I can memorize in front of an audience 50 people's names or 100 people's names that pass around a microphone, 100 random words, 100 random numbers, or a shuffled deck of cards or whatever, there's a time obviously I couldn't do that, right? I was worse off than most people who are listening, but there's no such thing as a good or bad memory. There's a trained memory and untrained memory. Just like there's no such thing as a good or bad brain, there's a trained brain and an untrained brain. So the second part for motivation is not just having purpose. Yes, you have purpose to read, to succeed, to make more money, to have greater impact. But if you're not doing it, maybe you lack energy. Maybe you ate a big processed meal and you're in a food coma. Maybe you're waiting to read at when you're most tired in the day and you haven't slept, and so you're depleted and you can't get yourself to act, right? Because you lack the energy.
Mm-hmm.
And so, we talk about in our podcast and in the books, 10 different ways you could optimize. Like, what are the best brain foods? What's the best way to reduce
Mm-hmm.
stress? Because stress uses up a whole lot of energy. How do you optimize your sleep? Now, after purpose and energy, let's say you have limitless purpose, you feel it, and you have lots and lots of energy, and you're still not following through, working out, or reading or whatever, making those sales calls, whatever. Then
Mm-hmm.
S3, the final part, 3 S's, small, simple steps. Small, simple steps. So here's the thing. So a lot of times people are not motivated because this thing is too abstract, and a
Mm.
confused mind doesn't do anything. Just like even if you're marketing to somebody, right? And if you make it too intimidating, they're not going to do anything because you have to break it down into small, simple steps that they could see
Mm-hmm.
themselves following through on. So maybe working out an hour a day is too hard for someone. That's not what they normally do. So maybe
Mm-hmm.
it's putting on their running shoes. Maybe it's getting to the gym. That's a small, simple step. Maybe if you can't get a kid to floss their teeth, maybe it's getting to floss one tooth, or clean their room is too difficult. It's too intimidating, right? It's like, climbing a mountain, but maybe putting one sock in the hamper, right? So inch by
Mm-hmm.
inch, it's a cinch. Yard by yard, it's way too hard. And my thing is, how do you find the small, simple step? I ask myself, simple question. What is the tiniest action, and people can write this down, what is the tiniest action I could take right now that will give me progress towards this goal where I can't fail? What is the
Mm.
tiniest action I could take right now that will give me progress towards this goal so tiny that I can't fail, right? Because you eliminate the friction, right? So then you
Yeah.
can create that positive momentum. So for me, you don't have motivation, you do it. And the process
Mm-hmm.
is purpose, energy, and small, simple steps.
Yeah, I love that because I feel like you're giving people ownership over their brain. A lot of people feel
Mm,
like they're born a genius, right? That you've got to like have these smarts and you're born with it or you're not. They're living with these labels. So I think everything you're saying is really impactful and also really practical. You're giving us steps that we can take to actually improve our brain. Hear that sound, young and profiters? It's music to my ears because that's the sound you hear whenever you make a sale on Shopify, the sponsor of today's episode. So many of my listeners out there are thinking about starting that side hustle or business that they've always dreamed about. If that's you, Shopify is the perfect thing to kickstart your entrepreneurship journey. If you really want to make your dreams happen, you've got to put some skin in the game, Yap Fam. You've got to invest in your dreams. Shopify is an all-in-one e-commerce platform to start, run, and grow your business. It's one of the most helpful tools that any business, regardless of size, can use. From helping you design your online store, to providing key analytics, to even handling online payments information, Shopify makes it incredibly easy to run an online store. Shopify gives entrepreneurs the resources that were once only reserved for big business. Now startups can sell just like the big dogs. With Shopify, you can synchronize online and in-person sales, and you can reach customers across every major social network. For example, Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, Pinterest, you name it. The best part is the data that Shopify provides. They have incredible data insights. You can gain insights as you grow with detailed reporting on conversion rates, profit margins, and so much more. Scaling your business is a journey of endless possibility with Shopify. Shopify powers millions of businesses. In fact, everybody I know who has an online store uses Shopify to power their business. Shopify will help you from first sale to full scale. If you're looking for a sign, young and profiters, to start your business, this is your sign. Go ahead and start that side hustle you've always dreamed of. Start that business you've always thought about. Launch your product. This is your future. This is possibility powered by Shopify. Go to shopify.com/profiting, all lowercase. Young and profiters, that's really important. It's case sensitive. So that's shopify.com/profiting for a free 14-day trial and get full access to Shopify's entire suite of features. Yes, you can use Shopify for free for 2 weeks. Grow your business with Shopify today. Go to shopify.com/profiting right now. Again, that's shopify.com/profiting. So let's talk about myths because a lot of
mhm.
people think that we only use 10% of our brain, right? You say that's not true. I've heard that 1,000 times. And I'd love to hear some of the myths that you've heard over the
Yeah.
years about learning and our brain.
Yeah, let's name a few of them. The lies or the BS. The BS
Mm-hmm.
stands for belief systems. So the limited ideas entertained. One of them is exactly what you mentioned, that we use 10% of our brain. The truth is that we actually use 100% of our brain. And but here's the caveat. Some people use that 100% differently than other people. It's kind of like we use 100% of our body. Most people use 100% of their bodies throughout the day, right? But some people are just more physically fit. They have endurance, they have flexibility, they have a level
Mm.
of agility and strength because they've trained those muscles. Well, I think the most important muscle, which is an organ, but metaphorically, it's more like a muscle, is the mind, and it's use it or lose it. But if I put my arm in a sling for a year, it wouldn't grow stronger. It wouldn't even stay the same. What would happen to that muscle? It would just atrophy. It would get weaker.
Mm-hmm.
That's what happens with our mental muscles. We're not utilizing them, and so we actually use 100% of our brain, just like we use 100% of our body. But if somebody needed to climb go for a hike and it's a pretty steep incline. Some people are just going to navigate that easier than others. And same thing when people are reading. Some people will navigate through a book with greater speed, efficiency, focus, understanding, retention, enjoyment, because they're just mentally fit. And so again, there's no such thing as a good or bad brain. There's a trained brain and an untrained brain. That's the truth. Another myth is that genius is, as you mentioned, genius is born. You're either born with it or you're not born with it, right? It's just like, and the truth is that it's not how smart you are, it's how are you smart. So there's a story in Limitless, and I don't want to go and get all audible right now, but maybe I could read this anecdote. I talk about how genius is actually built. So the story that I share in here says, a king was watching a great magician perform his act. The crowd was enthralled, and so was the king. At the end, the audience roared with approval, and the king said, "What a gift this man has, a God-given talent." But a wise counselor said to the king, "My lord, genius is built. Sorry. My lord, genius is built, not born. This magician's skill is the result of discipline and practice. These talents have been learned and honed over time with determination and discipline." The king was troubled by this message. The counselor's challenge had spoiled his pleasure in the magician's arts. Limited and spiteful man, how dare you criticize a true genius? As I said, you either have it or you don't, and you most certainly don't. The king turned to his bodyguard and said, "Throw this man into the deepest dungeon." And he added for the counselor's benefit, "So you won't be lonely. You could have two of your kind to keep you company. You shall have two piglets as cellmates." From the very first day of his imprisonment, the wise counselor practiced running up the stairs of his cell to the prison door, carrying in each hand a piglet. As the days turned into weeks and the weeks into months, the piglets steadily grew into sturdy boars. And with every day of practice, the wise counselor increased in power and strength. One day, the king remembered the wise counselor and was curious to see how imprisonment has humbled him. He had the wise counselor summoned. When the prisoner appeared, he was a man of powerful physique, carrying a boar on each arm. The king exclaimed, "What a gift this man has, a God-given talent." The wise counselor replied, "My lord, genius is built, not born. My skill is the result of discipline and practice. These talents have been learned and honed over time with determination and discipline."
Oh, I love that story.
It's one of those ideas that people don't see, as we were talking about earlier, the work that goes on behind the scenes,
Mm-hmm.
what you've done to build your business, to build your brand, they don't see that. And so it's the tip of the iceberg kind of theory. But the idea here is that people aren't born that they are actually with genius. It actually be built. And I believe genius leaves clues that when somebody's exceptional, and you've had so many of these guests, that are exceptional in certain areas, and you're helping them to deconstruct what they do and making it, the methods more clear, conscious for people who are listening, and helps them develop their fast track, right? Their
Mm-hmm.
shortcuts, if you will. And so,
Yeah.
yeah, I really do believe genius is something that's available to all of us.
Yeah, 100%. And doing is so important. Like you're saying, the reps, the
Hmm.
repetition, the consistency. I feel like that's really the key to everything. I feel like, so I always talk about this on my podcast, like get the skills, get the experiences, do the things. And like you said, it's not an overnight success ever. It's years and years. And then people just see the tip of that iceberg usually. So let's talk about memory. I love this. Memory is so foundational to everything that you say. You actually have said in the past that no learning is happening without memory. So talk to us about how memory plays into everything that you teach.
So I believe two of the most costly words in life are "I forgot." Like, how
Mm,
often do we say these words? Like, "I forgot to do it. I forgot to bring it. I forgot that meeting. I forgot what I was going to
all the
say.
time.
I forgot that conversation. I forgot that person's name." Every single time we have those thoughts, we could lose time. We could lose trust. We could lose a sale even. And so I believe on the other side that memory will actually make you money when you could easily remember facts and
Mm,
figures and talking points, product information, client information, right? And you have it at your mental fingertips, because everybody who's listening here, it's not like it was 100 years ago or generations ago. It's not like you're compensated for your brute strength, right? Today it's your brain
mm-hmm.
strength. It's not
Yeah.
like it was, agricultural age where you're paid for your muscle power. Today, it's your mind power. And
Hmm.
so memory is foundational. Socrates said learning is remembering. The challenge is memory wasn't a class back in school, right? I always thought it should have been the fourth R, reading, writing, arithmetic. But what about retention? What about recall?
Mm.
What about remembering? And so there's certain things we could do to be able to improve our memory. And so a lot of times people come to me and say, Jim, I want to get better at my memory. And I say, that's like saying, I want to be better at sports. What area specifically, what sport specifically? So let's say, let's go back to remembering names, right?
Hmm.
I
Yeah, I
think,
love that.
yeah. So I think there are three keys to remembering names. The first one I mentioned already. Um, and I use the acronym MOM, MOM, and is like the mother of all memory techniques. The M stands for motivation. So just a reminder,
Hmm.
when we forget something, we usually aren't connected to the reason why we want to remember it, right? And here's the thing, we don't remember all names, but nobody listening to this forgets all names either. And remember, I said
Mm.
genius leaves clues, and you're probably motivated to remember those names that you did remember. Maybe you're attracted to that person. Maybe that person could be good for your business or something. And you could
Hiring manager or something,
Exactly.
right?
And you could ask
Hmm.
yourself, you could connect with that again by asking yourself, why? Why do I remember this person's name? And come up with just one reason. Because if you can't come up with one reason, you won't remember. The O in mom stands for observation. And this is so simple, but it's usually the simple stuff that people forget to do. Observation means your attention. A lot of people aren't forgetting a name, they're just not paying attention. You could remember one or two words, right? A name. But most people, what are they doing? They're thinking about how they're going to reply or what they're
Mm.
going to say in response or waiting for their turn to speak. And so a lot of people, they're not forgetting, they're just not listening. And the art of memory is the art of attention. So I would remind you, imagine, and if you're writing this down, write the word listen. And here's a brain exercise. It's kind of like Wordle, like change the letters around, scramble the letters, and what word does it spell perfectly? Also, like if you scramble the letters and listen, it spells another word,
Silent.
silent. And that's all I would ask people to do if you want to improve their memory, remembering names. Ask yourself why, come up with a couple of reasons, and then just be silent. Right. One of
Mm.
my favorite books by one of my mentors, Dr. Stephen Covey, he wrote 7 Habits of Highly Effective People. And one of the habits is seek first to understand, then to be understood. Seek first to understand, then to be understood. That we don't have to be the most interesting person in the room, but I think to have greater impact, have greater income, certainly have greater influence, instead of being the most interesting person in the room, try to be the most interested person in the room, right? That
Mm.
curiosity and get seek first to understand. And it starts with the person's name, right? Because how are you going to, again, show you're going to care if you don't care enough just to remember their name? Because people don't care how much you know until they know how much you care, and so that's
Hmm.
so important. So just pay attention. And the final M in mom are the methods, the things that we have in our podcast and our book, and we could talk about some of them for remembering name. Something simple like be suave. So 6 steps on how to remember names and faces. If you see me do this at a live event or on video,
Hmm.
be suave. Very, very simple. The B, believe. Because if you believe you can or believe you can't, either way, you're right. And you want to
Mm.
limit the negative self-talk. Because remember, I said your brain is like a supercomputer, your self-talk is the program to run. So if you tell yourself, I'm not good at remembering names, you won't remember the name of the next person you meet. So many people at events come to me and they talk to me about their lies. They say, I'm too old, I'm not smart enough. And I say, stop. If
Hmm.
you fight for your limitations, you get to keep them. If you fight for your limitations, you get to keep them. And so we want to,
That's so good.
if people truly understood how powerful their mind is, they wouldn't say or think something they didn't want to be true. And so you want to
Yeah.
be able to keep it encouraging. And so the B and be suave, believe. The E, exercise. And I don't mean
Mm.
physical exercise, although people who are more physically active, like if you're listening to this podcast right now and you're on an elliptical or you're going for a brisk walk, you'll probably learn it better because as your body
Hmm.
moves, your brain grooves. When you move your body, you create brain derived neurotropic factors, BDNF, which is like fertilizer for neuroplasticity, great for learning. But I
Mm.
don't mean exercise, I mean practice, because practice makes progress. Practice makes progress. And so I'm very good at remembering names, but after the first month or two of learning how to do it, I haven't improved a whole lot more because once you know how to do something, you know how to tie your shoes, then you just know how to tie your shoes, right? You know how to type, you know
Mm.
how to drive a car. And after 30 or 60 days, it's a skill. So I just want to just reaffirm that it's not a You don't have a good or bad memory. There's a trained memory and untrained memory. And so I would say practice, and you don't have to go out there and practice remembering 50 people's names, but just start with one, and then one becomes two. And little by little, a little becomes a whole lot.
I love that. Be suave. And there's one part that I want to stick on, and that's the fact that it's not about retention, or it's not a retention problem. It's an observation problem, right? You need to actually pay attention and care. I'm actually really happy that you brought up the name recognition thing, because I was at Podcast Movement. You probably have heard of it. It's like a big conference, right? And I met some new friends, and like at the end of the night, and I'm like one of the bigger podcasters there, right? And at the end of the night, I said bye to this guy that we were hanging out with all night. I'm like, bye, Ben. And he's like, Hala, my name is Chase. And I was like, oh. And I was like, damn. And then I felt so silly. And then, when I saw this, I was like, how important is it to remember names? Like, it is one of the key foundations of networking, because that guy is forever going to remember that I embarrassed him in front of the other people, calling him the wrong name. And then it just seems like I didn't pay attention, right?
Yeah, and it happens. So shout out to Chase. But then the second half of Be Suave will help you do that. The S in Suave, say the name. So when somebody introduces themselves, say the name back to them and just literally just repeat it. Right, Chase, it's nice to meet you. And just by hearing it again will boost your retention, right? Because you get to hear it from them, you get to hear it from yourself. The U in Suave stands for use it. Now, you want to use it, you don't want to abuse it. So 3 or 4 times in the context of the conversation, wonderful. But you don't go to somebody and just meet them. Chase, it's nice to meet you. Chase, you want to grab a bite? Chase, how's work? That would be an abuse. But planting it 3 or 4 times will help you retain it. The A in Be Suave, ask. And you could ask all kinds of things about a person's name. Who are you named after? Is that, spelled with a Y or an I? Especially for names that are unusual, that you haven't heard before, right? Like your own. Have you does your name, does you have an origin, like for the name? Where would it come from?
My name, it's Arabic, and it actually means welcome.
Oh, that's
so in
beautiful.
Arabic, you pronounce my name Hala, and it means welcome, which is I'm a podcaster. I think it's fitting.
Oh, and so you get to, and then you could ask somebody how they spell it and the origin and where is it from, and all of a sudden asking about a person's name, right? They say a name is the sweetest sound to a person's ears, right? A name will automatically trigger someone's reticular activating system. I know you've done shows on that also and had guests talk about the RAS and RAS, but that's one of the things that are programmed. It's the sweetest sound, right? So it gets your attention automatically. And so calling people by name, asking about their name. So that's the A. And finally, the V and the E in Suave. The V is visualize. And here's the thing. So many people are better with faces than they are with names because they could see it, right? You go to someone and say, I recognize your face, but I forgot your name. You never go to someone and say the opposite. You never go to someone and say, I remember your name, but I forgot your face, right? That would make a lot of sense. But we tend to remember what we see. And because more of our nervous system, our brain, is dedicated to real estate towards visual processing. And so there's a proverb that says, what I hear, I forget. What I see, I remember. What I do, I understand. What I hear, I forget. I heard the name, I forgot it. What I see, I remember. I saw your face. I'll always remember your face. And going back to what I do, I understand, through practice, makes progress. So I would say if you tend to remember what you see, visualize, then try seeing what you want to remember. So if you meet somebody, name Chase, right? Then all of a sudden you can imagine it for a split second that they might be chasing you, right? Or something like that. Or if someone named Ben, right? Imagine, and maybe they have a great head of hair, and you imagine that their head is like somehow associated with Big Ben, right? Or something like that. And then all of a sudden, it sounds childish, but how fast are children at learning, right? They make these images, and then that's feeling to it too. We already said that information, when times emotion, become a long-term memory. And so how can you visualize a person's name to make it more memorable? A person's name is Mary. Imagine them carrying 2 lambs or getting married to them, right? And someone's name Mike, right? You just imagine them jumping on the table and singing karaoke on a microphone. And again, and these are temporary. It's to overcome what I call the 6-second syndrome. When somebody tells you their name, you have 6 seconds to do something with that. Otherwise, what happens? it's just,
Flies
it's
out.
gone. As soon as the handshake breaks, it
Mm-hmm.
like falls right to the floor. And so it
Mm-hmm.
grabs it. It forces you to focus on the person and it forces you to focus on the name. And that focus will
Mm.
lead to remembrance. And so
Mm.
remember what you want to see by seeing what you want to remember. That's the B. And then finally, the E and B suave is end. You know, when you leave somebody, you use their name, saying goodbye using their name. Because if you could walk into a room of strangers and like 20 people and then leave saying goodbye to every single one of them by name, who are they all going to remember? They're all going to remember you, right? And that's a standout skill in a world where a lot of services are commoditized and you need to be able to stand out and become unforgettable, right? I think one of the easiest ways to stand out in a room is remembering people.
I 100% agree. Like, this is such a good hack. I feel like everyone should rewind, take some notes down, and give yourself a homework assignment. Start to practice Be Suave when you're at your next networking event or party or whatever it is, and see if you can remember every single person's name and give it a try. I think it's really cool. And you know what? Based on your work, I found out that we're actually getting worse at stuff like this because of digital dementia and
Mm,
some issues like this. So I'd love to move on to that as we start to close out the interview. So you call these supervillains, and
yeah.
this is all related to our relationship with technology. You have four drivers of the digital age that reduce brain performance: digital deluge, digital distraction, digital deduction, and digital dementia. So I'd love to
Yeah.
learn a little bit about those areas.
So these are the four horsemen of the mental apocalypse. And it's one of those
Mm.
things where, let's start with digital deluge. It's one of those things where it's overload, information overload. And how many people listening feel like there's too much information and not a lot of time, right, to go through it all, that we're drowning in information, but we're starving for that practical wisdom, if you will, or, the ability to learn how to swim, right, in a world
Mm.
flooded with information and data. So the amount of information is doubling at dizzying speeds. They say that, um, that it's the amount of information, when you graduate school, the half-life information is getting shorter and shorter because it could be outdated. And it's insane because
Mm.
like it's upbeat. I was doing a program at Google and I heard somebody say there that the chairman said that the amount of information that's been created from the dawn of humanity to the year 2003, just a couple of decades ago, that amount of
Mm-hmm.
information, think about like the Library of Congress, that amount of information now is created every 48 hours online.
Oh
48
my
hours.
God,
Like,
that's crazy.
think about all the podcasts and all the social media and
That's
the
insane
amount.
to think
Yeah.
about.
And so we're drowning in it. So the amount of information is doubling, but how we learn it and read it and retain it, that hasn't changed a whole lot. But that growing gap creates digital deluge, information anxiety. And that's an actual, like they call it information fatigue syndrome, higher blood pressure, compression of leisure time, more sleeplessness. I think we'd all identify. So the goal is you upgrade your learning skills to keep up with that overload. And then you have
Mm.
digital distraction. And how do you maintain your concentration in a world full of rings and pings and dings and app notifications, social media alerts? And I think and again, I'm pro technology. It allows us to do this, right?
Mm-hmm.
Allows us to inspire, to empower, to entertain. And there's the other side of the coin or the sword, where it's driving us to distraction. With
Yeah.
every like, share, comment, cat video, whatever, we're getting this dopamine flood, and we wonder why we can't concentrate when we're on doing our screen time with work or just having a
Mm-hmm.
conversation with somebody, and our mind wanders. And part of it is I feel like it's our brain has been just distracted and overloaded, and it's going all
Mm-hmm.
different ways. So that's why we train in Limitless chapters on focus and flow. And then
Yeah.
besides digital deluge and digital distraction, we have digital deduction, and that's a term I just coined. Basically, I read this study where children, when they're tested, this generation, they're not showing the scores and the same kind of results as previous generations. In fact, it's lower in their ability to deduce and to rationalize, to apply logic. And the study suggests is because of the technology is doing the thinking for us. Remember, like even like GPS, like how would we know to
Mm-hmm.
get from here to there? But you'd have to use some kind of visual spatial intelligence. But here we're just kind of on autopilot, and technology with algorithms would just teach you not just like it'll teach you not how to think, but teach you what to think, right,
Mm-hmm.
based on things. And so that's digital deduction, and I feel like it's so important for school not only to teach us what to learn, but how to learn, not what to think,
Yeah.
but how to think ourselves. And then finally, the last one, as you mentioned, is this one called digital dementia. And that's the equivalent of us physically, if we just took Uber and Lyft just to go 5 blocks and we didn't walk it, then there's a physical, it's convenient, but it could be crippling to our body. If we rely on taking an elevator just to go to our apartment on the 3rd floor every day, then we lose an opportunity to exercise, our muscles. And just think about something simple like, I don't know, phone numbers. Like how many phone numbers did you used to know, like growing up? Like,
yeah, so many.
yeah. And
now I don't even know my best friend's phone number, but I couldn't tell you my best friend's phone number by
and,
heart.
and you're communicating with that person every single day, right?
Yeah.
And so then that's digital dementia. And I have to say again, I don't want to memorize 500 phone numbers, but it should be concerning we've lost the ability to remember one phone number or a passcode or a PIN number or a seed phrase or, like our hotel room or credit, whatever it happens to be. And so your memory is a muscle. It's use it or lose it, just like the rest of our mind. And again, technology is not good or bad. It's just like fire. Fire is technology. It could cook your food or it could burn down your home, right? It's just how it's applied. And, I would just say, just like with anything, there's a quote in Limitless that says, life is the C between B and D. Life is C between B and D. B stands for birth. D stands for death. Life C, choice. That our lives is a sum total of all the choices we made up to this point. And these difficult times, they can define us. These difficult times can distract us. These difficult times can diminish us. Or these difficult times, they actually can develop us. We ultimately decide, every single day. And I want to remind people that we always have that ability to decide to just to show up for ourselves, right? Because I think we're all on this journey to reveal and realize our fullest potential. I really do believe there's a version of every single person who's listening to this. There's a version of yourself that you haven't met yet. There's a version of your brain you haven't met yet. There's a version of your business that you haven't met yet. And the goal is we show up every single day until we're introduced.
Yeah. And like you said, technology is not good or bad. We just need to evolve with that technology and learn how to learn better. And what a great conversation we had today about building a better brain. So, Jim, the way that we close out our show is I give 2 questions that I ask all my guests at the end of the show. We do something fun at the end of the year with them. So the first one is, what is one actionable thing our young and profiters can do today to become more profiting tomorrow?
So I would say one of the most important things you do is to love your brain. And what do I mean by that? It's just asking yourself, like if you were born, let's say when you reached the age of driving and you were given a car, but this was just like the one car that you had for the rest of your life, how well would you take care of that car? And
keep it spotless. I would take it to service. Yes. I would do everything right.
And we have this vehicle that we're going through life in, which is our body, and part of our body is our brain. So I would ask everybody the one thing that you could do to be able to do that, have more purpose and profitability, is to love your brain. And then just a simple thing you could do is ask yourself, is this good for my brain or is this bad for my brain? Is watching this good for my brain or bad for my brain? Eating this good for my brain or is bad for my brain? And not that you have to be absolutely perfect, right? But the goal is progress. And so love your brain, because your brain controls everything. It's your number one wealth building asset.
I think that's super smart. A lot of people concentrate on their bodies and they forget about their brain. So I think that's great. All right. What is your secret to profiting in life? And profiting does not have to mean money.
So I think if you want your business to grow, your brand to grow, your book sales to grow, your bank account to grow, then your brain has to grow. And I say this because I always wear a brain on my shirt. I'm always seen on social media pointing to my brain. And I think what you see, you take care of. You see your car, you take care of it. You see your hair, you take care of it. Your clothes, you take care of. But we don't see the thing that controls everything, which is the human brain. And so I would say that you want to be able to, just like with technology, we hear about, you upgrade your apps, you upgrade your phone, you upgrade your software, your computers. But when's the last time we upgraded the most important technology that has created all that other technology, which is the human mind? And so I would say the fastest way to grow, to get to that area, is you reach and then you rest and then you repeat, right? You stretch, you stabilize, right? You're climbing a mountain, you stretch yourself and then you stabilize and then you stretch some more and then you stabilize. And so I think that would be it, that you learn to earn to return. You learn because the more you learn, the more you earn. And the more you earn, the more you have the ability to return. And I think that return is really important, because that sense of contribution, you train your nervous system, your brain, that there's more than enough. We gave away
Mm.
100% of the proceeds to Limitless, to charity, to build schools everywhere from Ghana to Guatemala,
Oh,
for
that's great.
teachers, to school buildings, to healthcare, clean water for the children, and also Alzheimer's research for women, because women are twice as likely to experience Alzheimer's than men. And I lost my caregiver, my grandmother, to Alzheimer's, so we do it in
Mm.
her memory. But I would say one of the best things you could do, chronic stress shrinks your brain, and one of the best ways to get out of stress is to contribute, is focus on somebody else. And so how can you invest some of your time, your talent, your treasure to making a difference? Because it's nice to make a dollar, and I think it's better to make a difference. And so,
Mm.
when you can do both, I think it's remarkable. Be, do, have, and then share.
What a great way to end the interview. That was so powerful, Jim. Thank you so much. Where can our listeners learn about you and everything that you do?
Yeah, if you like this conversation, we have a podcast. It's 20 minutes long, and links are in my Instagram profile, so it's hard not to find us. And then our book, limitlessbook.com. You can find it anywhere you buy books. And I'm really passionate, and I just want to thank you so much, Hala. I'm glad we can make this happen after the past couple
Yeah,
of
I'm so
years.
happy.
I really respect how much energy and effort you put into preparation. I respect
Oh, thank you so
expertise,
much.
and I've listened to your show. Remarkable that you could have, that you have these conversations with these experts and pull out the information you do, but also make it so much fun, and memorable
Oh, thank
for
you so
people.
much.
So congratulations on all that. I would challenge everyone to actually take a screenshot of this episode in whatever form you're consuming it, whether it's, on iTunes, Spotify, whatever, YouTube, and tag us both there. And I would love, as you post that and share it, because I think the fastest way to learn something is to share it with somebody else. You teach it,
Hmm.
because when you teach it, you get to learn it twice. And post it so we get to see it, because if you tag us, we'll see it. And then share one thing you're going to do for a better brain. What's one thing you're going to do for a better brain? And I'll actually repost some of my favorites when it goes live, and I'll actually gift a few copies of Limitless to some
Oh,
random people.
perfect. I would love to do a book giveaway. We could
Yeah,
definitely do that. And I'm going to stick all of your links in my show notes. So don't worry. We're going to make it super easy
yeah.
for everyone to follow you on social media to get your book. Jim, this was honestly such a great conversation. Thank you so much for the lovely compliment. Makes my job very easy when I have an expert like you on the show. So thank you so much for your wisdom and your time. You are the ideal young and profiting guest, and just so happy we could make this happen as well.
Amazing. Be limitless, everybody.